If you're thinking about moving to the Oregon coast and you've never been here before, maybe you're coming from out of state, maybe you've been here a few times, maybe you're an Oregonian and you've never been, this video is for you. I'm going to give you a full map tour of the Oregon coast, and I'm going to give you a brief overview of each town, mostly the major towns, and kind of show you how they differ from each other. All that starts now. Hey everyone, Seth Marchant with the Home Team Brokers here. If you're new to this channel, living on the Oregon coast, we show you what it's like to eat, sleep, play, work, all the pros and cons of living on the Oregon coast. And in this video, I'm going to give you a full map tour of the Oregon coast so you can get a better feel for how things are laid out. And I'm going to talk about some of the differences for some of the bigger towns along the Oregon coast. Make sure and hit the subscribe button, tap the bell so you get notified each time we drop a new video, which is every week. We get people reaching out to us all the time that want to move along the Oregon coast, and we always appreciate hearing from you. You can give us a call, send us a text, shoot us an email, or click the link below in the description if you want to schedule a Zoom with us. No matter how you get in touch, we've got your back when it comes to moving to the Oregon coast. All right, so we get a fair amount of people asking us things such as, what's the difference between the northern Oregon coast and the central coast and the southern coast, and kind of what are the cutoffs for those? Where exactly are those places? What are some of the differences between towns? And I know in this day and age of navigation, people don't often look at maps. You know, you just throw something in the navigation, then you follow the directions. So for all of you people out there that maybe don't look at maps too often, this should sort of help you to get a better feel for how the coast is laid out. And like I mentioned, I'm going to show you some of the differences between the towns and maybe some of the best spots to hit along the Oregon coast. I'll save one of the best for last. We're going to start here on the North Oregon coast here, first in Astoria. Astoria is going to be one of the larger towns along the Oregon coast, population around 10,000 or so, something like that. It feels bigger because it's usually pretty lively. If you go downtown, which is kind of right around this area right here, you'll find there's typically people out and about walking, patronizing, shops and restaurants. A great little spot here is, if you can see this green line, Astoria has a river walk, and that's kind of the feel with Astoria. You don't really actually see the beach in Astoria. You're looking at the Columbia River right here. If you really want to get into some sand and actually get on the coast, you would have to go over here to Warrenton. So Astoria doesn't quite have sort of the coastal beach feel that some of the other towns that are actually on the coast, set inland. There are quite a few other towns along the Oregon coast, though, that are sort of inland along a river, just like Astoria. A lot of houses here. If you're looking for housing, you're probably going to be able to find something up and coming too. So Astoria is growing. There's more businesses opening up. There's lots of things to do. And there's kind of a pretty big variety of houses. If you look right here, and let me switch to satellite view. Can't quite tell, but from the satellite view, I'll put maybe a video or a picture in here to overlay. But this is one big hill, and so all these houses kind of right here sort of sit on a hill, and a lot of them have a great view of the river right here. Very condensed, as you can kind of see in this area, but Astoria covers all of this entire area right here too. There are some properties that are sort of a little bit more rural, maybe on bigger lots if you're looking for a house like that. All in all, Astoria is going to be a good place, especially for younger people, people that want to go do things out and about, restaurants, breweries. They've got some of the best breweries along the Oregon coast. Shout out to Bowie and Fort George, probably two of my favorites. Moving here sort of southwest to Warrenton. Now, Warrenton is probably lesser known. The downtown in Warrenton, there's not much there. I don't know too many people that kind of go out of their way to go to Warrenton. A lot of nice houses around Warrenton, so you can definitely find a nice house, maybe a little less expensive than some places. And And maybe a little bit more rural, off the beaten path, that type of thing too. Might be able to find something on a bigger lot. Not quite as condensed and congested. You'll see right here too. You notice you've got Fred Meyer, Walgreens, and Costco. That kind of trifecta between those three stores. It's going to give you probably the best, like, bigger, big box type shopping along the entire Oregon coast. And then another part of Warrenton here, Fort Stevens State Park, big tourist spot. This is a massive park right here. Definitely a great place to visit or camp. A lot of places to camp. So kind of the big attraction around Warrenton is going to be Fort Stevens and everything that comes along with that. Moving south here along the coast, one thing to kind of note about this area, this is one of the few areas along the Oregon coast where you can drive on the beach. How far north and how far south you can go does vary depending on the time of the year, but typically from this area, Strawberry Knoll, down to Gearhart, which is going to be right there, you can drive that entire stretch. So that's an appeal for a lot of people to come drive or camp along the coast right there. You do find a little bit more trash, so it's not quite as clean. I wouldn't say it's dirty though, but not quite as clean and serene as some of the other beaches along the coast, which we'll get into later in this video. But one of the best beaches and kind of stretches along the Oregon coast. Right here, Sunset Beach. This is just a little incorporated area. It's not like an actual town with like a downtown or anything like that. And same with Surf Pines. I'll throw some video in here that'll give you kind of some drone footage of this area, so you can kind of see a little bit more of what it looks like. This is a gated community actually right here. The gates, I think, end and begin right there. So all these houses are gated. And these are just neighborhoods. There's no actual town right here. A lot of people actually, funny enough, Gearhart obviously is closer to Surf Pines and Sunset Beach, but I know a lot of people that kind of live in this area and sort of consider this or have second homes in this area, kind of actually consider this more Seaside. Some people even write their address as Seaside. Seaside is kind of one of the bigger, more well-known towns in the area. Gearhart is very small. It does have a little tiny downtown. You got a golf course that is a big attraction for a lot of people. One thing they're kind of known for is there's a big herd of elk too that kind of commonly make the news, because they're always around. You can always find them, and people like to go see those elk or go find them, go take pictures, go take videos, and again they're almost always around. So Gearhart has a fair amount of houses. They're also building too a lot of new houses between Gearhart and Surf Pines. You can actually find some houses that have larger lots too, if you're looking for something with a larger lot, which is not very common along the Oregon coast. A lot of stuff along the Oregon coast is going to be really packed in there, especially if you're like right near the water. So a lot of small lots on the Oregon coast. Typically you have to go farther inland to find something bigger. This kind of area, Surf Pines and Gearhart, you can actually find some quarter acre, half acre, even acre lots. Some equestrian properties being built in here as well too. So if you're an equestrian, maybe that's a good spot for you. Gearhart's very nice. This entire beach is very nice. It does get sort of crowded in the peak season, but when it's not peak season, you can sometimes walk these beaches and you won't see anybody for a very long time. Sometimes as far as the eye can see. Yeah, it's usually more like a Tuesday, Wednesday type of thing. You're always going to see people on the beach on Saturdays and Sundays along here, but it can get congested, but it's not always super congested. All right, so now down to Seaside. And then one other note, too, about this beach, too. Driving on the beach, occasionally people do get stuck. It's more common for people to get stuck down in Pacific City. There's actually a cool group. Shout out to Sons of Beaches. There's a group called Sons of Beaches. They have a Facebook group that are sort of dedicated at pulling people out that get stuck driving along the sand here. So you don't see it too often. Occasionally it does happen, people driving and getting stuck. But just know that if you do get stuck, there's people out there that are happy to come help you. So down to Seaside, this is going to be one of the most popular spots along the North Oregon coast. The reason being, let me scroll out here a little bit and show you. Reason being is because this highway right here, Highway 26, also known as Sunset Highway. It's known as Sunset Highways because when you're traveling west, you can kind of, I don't know, in some places see the sunset, not Not many places, but probably a few places. Anyways, going east from the beach, west from Portland, you can kind of see coming from Portland, a lot of people are taking 26 to come out this way. And when you take 26, you're going to hit the 101. You can go north or south. A lot of people are going north. They're going north either to Seaside or Gearhart or like in Astoria. You can also come this way too. And if you're in North Portland, it might make a little bit more sense to take 30. But most people going to the coast from Portland are taking 26. Probably a greater percentage of them are heading north once they hit the 101 rather than south. And so for that reason, it does get pretty congested in here. Once you kind of hit Seaside, it's really a lot of kind of bumper to bumper all the way until about Gearhart, even if it's not quite peak season. So Seaside is a big tourist attraction. If you do come through here, you'll want to drive right here down this road, Broadway. This is kind of where everybody goes, and then there's a little turnaround right there. Bunch of shops and restaurants that are kind of all catered towards tourism. So that's kind of like your tourism hotspot right there. Across the way is where you'll find the outlets up here. That's another big draw for people, is to go to the outlets. So Seaside is kind of one of the more touristy spots along the Oregon coast. They do have a great beach. It is typically very busy though. It's not the case where you ever go on the beach in Seaside and not see people like you might up at like Sunset Beach or like around Gearhart where we were just looking. But a great little town. I probably shouldn't call it little. It's not one of the smaller towns along the Oregon coast, but it's not as big as Astoria. Astoria, you actually have some like 4 or 5, 6-story buildings, 7-story, maybe even. You won't quite see that in Seaside, so it's got a little bit more of a smaller feel in a way, but it does get very congested with tourism. All around a great town, though. Really popular town for people in Portland, and I think it's a town that we get asked about a fair amount for people that are moving from outside of the state as well. Now, heading just south, as I mentioned, where you're coming from Portland, 26, and you hit 101, you go south. The first thing south is going to be Cannon Beach. Now, Cannon Beach has Haystack Rock. Haystack Rock is probably the most photographed. If it's not the most, it's definitely a top 2 or top 3 photographed rocks or formations or whatever along the entire Oregon coast. Now, the 101, you can kind of see right here, the downtown for Cannon Beach, it has a downtown, is right along here. So the 101 doesn't go through Cannon Beach. So unless you pull off right or take this exit right here, you're not going to see Cannon Beach as opposed to like a Seaside. The 101, you'll know you're in Seaside. It doesn't go through downtown Seaside, but you've got residential and commercial on both sides of the 101 here in Seaside. You don't have that in Cannon Beach. So if you're going down the 101, you really won't even see Cannon Beach unless you take the exit and actually drive down here through here. And if you just want to check it out, definitely do so, and then just hop back on the 101 and continue on south. Cannon Beach is smaller, it's quaint, it's very nice. It's one of the most expensive parts along the Oregon coast. Housing is very limited. It's tough to find a house there, and for that reason, it's being competitive. Housing is very expensive there, but great spot along the Oregon coast. Probably one of the more desirable spots along the Oregon coast. Now, heading south, here, you're going to see a lot of places like this that are just kind of little unincorporated areas, and as you'll kind of see, places like this, that's just going to be considered Cannon Beach. The next thing that you get to that wouldn't be considered Cannon Beach, that is very small, is an Arch Cape. There's just a handful of houses along here. Couple hotels, maybe a resort, not much else. It's very small. When you're driving along the 101 here, right, it's very wooded right here. So there's a lot of trees. So a lot of the houses are sort of shielded by the trees. So they've got some good privacy. Beautiful neighborhood, beautiful spot. If you wanted to kind of be along the northern Oregon coast and you had the means to do so, to have something a little bit more secluded, it's going to be tough to find a house in there. But if that's where you wanted to be, it's beautiful in there. All right, now moving along south, next we are going to run into Manzanita. Manzanita sort of feels similar to a Cannon Beach. It is right off of kind of the 101, so you're not really going to see it unless you turn off and drive down. And the downtown is kind of right here. It's also similar to Cannon Beach in that the downtown kind of sits right on the beach, and they've got a great beach, just like Cannon Beach does. Very small, lots of vacation rentals in here. Also a very popular spot for people coming from Portland to vacation, hence a lot of vacation rentals there. One of the more popular, probably smaller spots along the Oregon coast. If you're driving by, definitely pull off and at least drive through the downtown and go check out the beach. Neckanee Beach is great as well, too. Anything along here, this beach right here, this is all going to be very, very nice. Not super crowded. It's going to be probably less crowded than a Cannon Beach. Cannon Beach can get pretty crowded. That Haystack Rock draws a lot of people in. Like I said, Seaside can get pretty crowded. Manzanita, you're kind of getting to a point where you're getting a little bit farther away from the tourism, so it's not quite as crowded there. All right, so moving along the 101, Nehalem, Wheeler, these are very, very small areas. I'm not even sure how many people live in Nehalem or Wheeler. It's probably under 1,000 people. You know, you've got a handful of restaurants, handful of houses. We don't get asked about these areas too much. They sit, as you can see, right along the Nehalem River. Nice little towns, not exactly up and coming though. Not a ton of growth because people aren't really looking to move to or buy second homes in. You probably don't see as much growth. So Manzanita is probably one of the more desirable areas. It makes it more expensive. If you're looking for something a little bit more on a budget, but you want to be close to these areas, a Nehalem and a Wheeler might be good. This is just a couple minutes, just right down the street. So real estate is going to be a lot less expensive here. These two areas do kind of have their own little downtowns. Not much to it. Very, very small. Tourists aren't coming there too much. Tourists are going to Manzanita. They're walking the downtown of Manzanita. They're out and about. Not so much with Nehalem or Wheeler. So if you're looking for something maybe a little bit smaller and quieter and you want to be in this area, that might be a good spot for you. Moving on down, Brighton, little tiny unincorporated area, not that much there. Great beach right here, Nadana Beach. You're not going to see it though, unless again the 101 is not going to, as you can see, is not going to go through it. So that's a place you can pull off, and a pretty good little beach along there. Same with this entire area. Really, this entire area is going to be kind of thought of as Rockaway Beach. So the 101 does go directly through Rockaway Beach. This entire stretch of beach, this is a great stretch of coast, and maybe not as congested as a Seaside. Rockaway Beach is one of the probably top kind of tourism spots along the Oregon coast, top vacation rental spots. Sort of like a Seaside, there's probably not as many vacation rentals in Rockaway, or in Seaside rather, as there is Rockaway Beach, but they both receive their fair share amount of tourism. Lots of vacation rentals in Rockaway Beach. That's a big part of their economy is second homes, and then this entire beach is about 7 miles of uninterrupted beach, which is quite a bit of beach for the Oregon coast. You're just going to get a lot of rock formations and stuff that typically, that are going to separate these beaches here along the Oregon coast. So if you're somebody that likes to take long walks, this is a good spot. There's a fair amount of real estate here between single family homes, and there's condos. And moving south, a few other small little areas, unincorporated areas. Again, these are little tiny areas that there's a handful of houses. You're going to find a little bit of a downtown here in Garibaldi. Good spot to go crabbing, whether it's crabbing off a dock or there's places you can rent a boat and go crabbing along here in Tillamook Bay. Garibaldi is also a very small town, but it is a popular town for people to kind of stop and do some bay stuff, which typically means crabbing, and then that takes you kind of down really into Tillamook. I mean, Tillamook is going to be kind of the big area. The big thing I would say about Tillamook, for better or for worse, just depends on your preference, what you're looking for, but Tillamook probably has the least coastal feel to it, the least beach feel to it. It is a farming town. There's a lot of cows. People talk about the smell, being able to smell the cows. And if that name, if you're not familiar with this town, but that name rings a bell to you, and I'm not sure how far out they extend, but for sure the Pacific Northwest, Tillamook, has a cheese factory, or rather maybe, I don't know if you call it a creamery. They make ice cream as well too, but they're mostly known for cheese and ice cream. They've got probably some of the best cheese and ice cream in the country. So anywhere you go in the state of Oregon, any store, you're going to be able to find Tillamook cheese and oftentimes Tillamook ice cream. So that's what they're really known for. There's a big, actually brand new factory that a lot of people like to go tour. If you're stopping in Tillamook and you're going to do something touristy, or maybe not even touristy, I mean, it's a cool place to go. Taste some cheese and some ice cream. You probably have to stop at the Tillamook Cheese Factory. But going back to what I was saying, this doesn't really have a super coastal feel. We don't get a whole lot of people reaching out to us that are looking to move to Tillamook. So Tillamook is really not on the radar for people that want to live or move along the Oregon coast. Not saying it's not a good spot, but people that typically reach out to us are people that want to be on the water or close to the water, have a coastal feel, see the sand, see the beach often, or at least periodically. Not so much the case with Tillamook. Got a few small unincorporated areas up here as well, kind of little hidden gems up here. As you can kind of see with the map, because of where 101 goes, these areas, Netarts, Oceanside, they don't get a whole lot of traffic up here. Not a ton of houses up here either. There's a few here and there. Great spot to go check out, take some pictures, go hiking. If you did want to live somewhere really secluded and could find something, I mean, these are great spots, especially if you want to be away from the tourism, but very, very small. Moving along, we're going to kind of skip these areas right here. As you can kind of see, this isn't exactly along the Oregon coast. Cloverdale kind of gets lumped in with Pacific City. So if you're searching for houses in Pacific City, or if you're searching in Cloverdale, sometimes you'll find some overlap in your searches. So you kind of just note that. You're not going to find that with these two areas. Tierra del Mar, should mention that. That's a great small little area. Sand Lake, one thing I'll say about Sand Lake, Sand Lake is one of the few places that you, along the Oregon coast, that you have dunes where people are going for recreation. Growing up in Oregon, when once my friends turned 16 they could drive, a lot of them were going to Sand Lake and taking quads and dirt bikes and stuff like that. I never did, so I can't speak to that too much. I went, but I never rode dirt bikes. But if you like sand and all the kind of off-road recreation that comes along with that, Sand Lake is going to be one of the top spots along the Oregon coast. All right, so now down south of that, Pacific City. Pacific City, definitely, I would call Pacific City sort of a hidden gem. For me, growing up in Oregon, you didn't hear too much about Pacific City. I don't know that it was a big destination for people, whether they're in Portland or closer to a Eugene, which is a couple hours south of Portland. But it's definitely grown up a lot over the past 5 or 10 years. One notable thing about Pacific City, you have a place called Pelican Brewery. It's a brewery that was started maybe just before 2000, I think, something like that, late 90s. I do remember they were one of the very first Facebook ads that I saw was the Pelican Brewery in Pacific City, which is right here. Again, Pacific City, sort of like a lot of other places that we've kind of looked at. 101 does not go through it, so you have to get off of 101 to find Pacific City, and for that reason, it probably didn't get a ton of traffic for a long time, but it's become a lot more popular in the past 5 to 10 years, and so it's grown up a lot. There's a lot more businesses there. I'd probably give a lot of credit to Pelican Brewery because I know they did a lot of advertising for a long time. And like I said, they were one of the very first Facebook ads I can remember seeing well over 10 years ago. And they've got a great spot. They've really got the best spot in the area, too. So that kind of draws a lot of people in. They're right there on the water. And to get to the water, so you can drive down here. I don't think there's any Sons of Beaches that are going to pull you out if you get stuck. You're just going to be looking for the random, whoever's around to help. But a lot of people get stuck on the beach right here. A big draw is Cape Kiwanda. So a big thing to do is there's just this big sand dune, if you will. And the thing to do for whatever reason is just people will walk up this sand dune. And then you've got a great view On the other side of the sand dune as well, McPhillips Beach, you don't see nearly as many people over here. So just north of Cape Kiwanda, that's a great kind of little hidden secret, hidden beach. But going back to Cape Kiwanda, so that's a big thing to do. And then walk along the beach here. There's a lot of good surfing here as well. This kind of area, this beach, probably one of the nicer areas, nicer beaches along the Oregon coast these days. Not a ton of houses here. You do have some houses. They are building houses, though. There are quite a few houses being built right here. And back up in the hills, too, you've got some great views from some of the houses that set back up in the hills, kind of just on the other side of Cape Kiwanda Drive, just to the east. So if you're looking for a house that has some really epic views, that's a great spot. They have their own haystack rock as well, similar to Cannon Beach. So it looks similar, and sometimes you'll see a picture of that rock, and it's usually Cannon Beach, but it might be Pacific City. Sometimes hard to tell the difference. It looks very similar. All right, moving along south now. Not a whole lot here, but this is a good little spot right here, Neskowin. Again, you'll have to pull off of the 101. There's not much here. There might be a few places to eat, if I recall correctly. Handful of houses. It's very small. There's not really like a downtown or anything like that, but they've got a great beach. If you're looking for, and there's also sort of similar to Pacific City, you've got some houses that kind of set back up in the hills up here that have some great views. So this is a good little small secluded spot that doesn't get a ton of traffic, kind of like a hidden gem. There's a lot less here than there is in Pacific City. So if you're somebody that like needs to have a little bit more shopping, a little bit more restaurants, you're going to be venturing outside of Neskowin if you live there pretty often. It's very small there, but very beautiful. All right, moving along south here, handful of other smaller unincorporated areas. The next real big thing you're going to get to is Lincoln City. Now, Lincoln City feels sort of the longest. It probably is. It really kind of starts here and kind of really goes. I mean, because this is probably one of the top kind of destination spots along the Oregon coast, you do get a fair amount of congestion. And so you kind of see that congestion right when you get into town, which is right along here. You'll see the Chinook winds. You'll see the golf course right here on the right side. You won't see Devil's Lake. You have to pull off to get to Devil's Lake. Great lake. A lot of houses along that lake too. If you wanted to be on a lake and be along the coast, that would be probably one of the best spots to be. But this entire area gets pretty congested. Traffic goes pretty slow all the way down. So this is a really long, stretching, kind of sprawling area. This is all Lincoln City, all from here to there. The big draws for Lincoln City, you have a casino, Chinook Winds Casino. Probably the biggest. There's a handful of casinos along the Oregon coast. I don't know, maybe half a dozen. Chinook Winds is probably the biggest, I would think. Just eyeballing it. Haven't looked up any numbers or anything like that, but just eyeballing it. Outlets are also in Lincoln City, sort of similar to Seaside, so that is another big attraction as well, too. I also want to point out right here, too, so you see this Highway 18 right here. If we scroll out and kind of see, okay, where's this traffic coming from? The way people come is they come from Portland. They come down here, 99, usually through McMinnville, 218. And so this you can kind of see. You've got 26 going to Seaside, kind of Cannon Beach. Highway 6, that branches off to go to Tillamook from 26. But beyond that, people are coming from Salem to take 18 to Lincoln City. 22 is going to take you to Pacific City. So you've got like a big highway that's taking people from Portland, from 99, and then from Salem. So for that reason, that's kind of the reason why I think you get a lot more congestion. You have a couple major highways that kind of draw all the people in here, and there's a lot of population here, a lot of accommodations, a lot of places to stay and rent, so a lot of tourism. It is really catered around tourism. A lot of kind of like those coastal, like beachy types of shops, that sell art and kites and stuff like that. So it's definitely got that like beach type of feel. A lot of great restaurants, really popular. So it's up and coming. A lot of places that are opening up along Lincoln City. Probably a Portland favorite so far of all the towns we've talked about. for Oregonians that live around Portland or like in northern Oregon, Seaside and Lincoln City are probably the top two most sort of common towns that people would travel to, whether it's just a day trip or staying overnight for however many days. One other thing to point out here with Lincoln City, Salishan is also a very popular spot. I've never personally been. Paul, who's the other person on this channel, he can maybe weigh in the comments here. He's been before. I think he's actually going here pretty soon. But this is a very nice area. If you wanted to have something really secluded, there are houses all along here. They're very expensive, as you might imagine, but beautiful houses and obviously a beautiful secluded area. And so Salishan, they've got a spa, they've got a resort, they've got a golf course. So a fair amount of people that are kind of Salishan is probably one of a name that you would hear from Oregonians, like, hey, I'm going to Salishan. So that's also kind of a draw too for Lincoln City. All right, now heading down south of Lincoln City. Again, this is all going to be Lincoln City. And then you've got like a 10-minute, 15-minute drive, something like that. And that takes you into Depot Bay. Some people have told me that Depot Bay feels like it's right next door to Lincoln City. It's not that far. It feels almost like an extension of Lincoln City. You do have a little downtown. The 101, as you can see, goes right through Depot Bay. Depot Bay is probably most commonly known for whale watching. And there's a place right here, Depot Bay Scenic Park. You can park. There's parking all along here. And the waves come right in crashing into the rocks right here. And sometimes the water will actually come up and over 101 when you get some really big waves. So those are kind of two things that Depot Bay is known for, is the whales. For whatever reason, I don't know why it is, but when the whales are migrating from north to south, they come really close into Depot Bay. So people come here to whale watch. There's trips that you can charter. There's a lot of boats. You'll see boats out here whale watching. And all in all, a really nice, smallish area. It feels pretty small. There's not a whole lot more to it than just the downtown that's right here. You've got houses that are sort of back up in the hills right here, kind of like Pacific City. You can find some great views. And then over here too, you've got houses down here that have some great views, especially for the whale watchers. If you're a whale watcher, Little Whale Cove might be a great neighborhood for you. You're going to have some great views and be close enough to the water. You might not even need some binoculars to see those whales. Now, moving south from Depot Bay, it's probably a 20-minute drive from Depot Bay to Newport. You've got a few small little unincorporated areas along the way. Some things to kind of point out. Quinn Head Lighthouse is a very popular destination spot for tourists. A lot of people stop there and check that out. This is a very nice area as well. All of this really is a very nice area. You got a Fred Meyer right there, so that's always good to have some bigger shopping. The thing I would say about Newport, it is a larger area. It feels a little bit bigger. It's bigger. As you can see, the 101 goes right through it. So if you're traveling south or if you're north heading on the 101, you'll go through Newport. If you're going to stop by through this area, you're probably going to want to drive down along here, along Bay Boulevard. This is kind of like the downtown, if you will. You're going to find a lot of restaurants and stuff like that all along here, but a lot of people will come down here, and I would say Newport kind of has more of a sort of a port feel to it than probably as much or anywhere else along the Oregon coast. And I mostly say that because you've always got like the ships in here with the bells ringing, and the sea lions are almost always making noise. So that there's always kind of like this thing of like, the fishing and the sea lions, and you're just constantly kind of hearing those noises. And so it really gives it that kind of like port feel. As opposed to more of like a beach feel. Lincoln City, to me, has a little bit more of a beach feel. But Newport is a great area. There's not much here on the south side of the bay. You do have the Oregon Coast Aquarium, which is probably the best aquarium along the Oregon coast. That's where Keiko was from the movie Free Willy for a fair amount of time. It's been some time since Keiko moved on. Rogue Brewery you have. That's a place that attracts a fair amount of people. But other than that, you can see you've got some RV parks, and there's not a whole lot here. You do have Noah. That's a little bit newer. Noah hasn't been there forever. I don't remember exactly when they moved in, but there's not a whole lot here on South Beach or on the south side of Newport. Everything is kind of right here, and it's got a little bit of a bigger town feel to it, but it's not like an Astoria where you'll find, like 4 or 5 story buildings. It's more like a Lincoln City where the 101 just goes right through it, and there's a fair amount of commercial buildings and houses and restaurants and things like that. Probably one of the top areas for people coming. If you look at Highway 20 here, you'll see that takes you, if you just go east, Corvallis is where Oregon State University is, but you get a fair amount of traffic for people coming either from Eugene and up this way or Salem and down this way. So Newport gets a fair amount of traffic from locals heading to the coast. Heading south, there's a bunch of nice houses along here too, by the way. Seal Rock, another it's just a neighborhood, just a small little unincorporated area, but a ton of really nice houses along the 101 right here. I will say, though, that if you do find a house along here, as you can kind of see, the 101 just hugs the coastline. So any kind of houses along here are typically like right off the 101. So they're not really super secluded from that traffic. Moving down here to Waldport, Bayshore. Bayshore, I think, is an unincorporated area. This is considered Waldport. This entire area is going to be considered Waldport. Not a huge town. There's maybe 3,000 people or so. In some ways, it kind of maybe feels smaller. There's probably some other places along the Oregon coast that have 2,000 or 3,000 people that feel bigger. Waldport has a smaller feel to it. It's a great spot. They've got a great beach there. Great spot for crabbing. Maybe a little bit underrated, kind of a little bit under the radar. Not as popular as like a Newport to the north, or even going to the south. I would put Yachats probably in that same category too. Yachats is very nice. A lot of people like Yachats actually, but Yachats is probably even smaller than Waldport, and everything in between. These are all little tiny unincorporated areas. You're not going to find anything big until you get to Florence. Florence is a very popular spot. A lot of people go to Florence that are local, and a lot of people that are coming from outside of the state are also looking for Florence. One thing to note about Florence is you can kind of see right here, and that name kind of gives it away, but other than Sand Lake, which was just to the north of Pacific City, this is one of probably the top spots for dunes. So again, if you're a dune sand person, ATV, UTV, whatever it is that you do on the sand, this will be one of the top spots along the Oregon coast. Little fact for you: the movie Dune, or originally the book Dune, the writer was inspired by time that he spent here in Florence, and the incredible dunes that are in Florence. So that should tell you a little bit about the dunes that you'll find in Florence. Now, the town itself, there's about 10,000 people here, which is about the same size as Astoria. It doesn't feel anything like Astoria, though. This feels like a smaller, sleepier town. It's a top retirement town, so the demographic skews a lot older. Don't see a whole lot of people. That's probably how most of the people that live there that are retired kind of like it. It's a very quiet, sleepy town, despite having a population of 10,000 people. You've got the Seusula River that goes directly through Florence right here. And another note about Florence, as you can see, you've got the Seusula River that goes right through Florence. A fair amount of towns along this river here too that have houses. One thing, I can't really speak to this personally, but other people that I know say that this is one of kind of like the top spots for the outdoorsmen. So hunting and fishing, Florence is there's great fishing, there's great deer hunting, elk hunting, whatever type of hunting that you typically do. This is probably one of the better outdoorsman spots along the Oregon coast. So great beaches as well too. Not a ton of tourism and traffic and people coming to Florence to like visit Florence. Probably most of the tourism is really driven by the dunes. and people that are doing all that kind of like off-roading dunes type of stuff. So great for outdoorsmen, great for retired people, great for people looking for dunes. Not as much growth and kind of like and restaurants that you might find for another town that has 10,000 people, like in Astoria, for example. All right, moving along down south, you get to Reedsport here. And as you can kind of see, you have more dunes right here. So there's basically 3 spots along the Oregon coast. That first one I mentioned, Sand Lake, and then, of course, you have Florence, and then you have kind of the North Bend, Coos Bay to Reedsport. There's dunes all along here. Reedsport is kind of smack dab in the middle of kind of all the best dunes along the Oregon coast. So if you're trying to frequent both of these places, Reedsport might be a good spot for you. I don't think that Reedsport has had a whole lot of growth in the past years or past decade or so. I think the population has actually even gone down at times. So with towns that aren't typically growing, they don't draw in as many businesses or tourists. So Reedsport is not a big destination spot, but sort of like Florence, if you're looking for something outdoors around the dunes, homes are maybe going to be here a little less expensive here. Not as much population here. I think there's maybe like 4,000 people in Reedsport, something like that. And then you've got Winchester Bay, just right down the 101 as well. The real big spot where a lot of people move to both from in-state and out-of-state is North Bend, Coos Bay. Really kind of think about it as Coos Bay. People from inside of this area distinguish between North Bend and Coos Bay, but people from outside of the area, and I mean like people in Eugene or Portland or maybe like a Medford down here, the big kind of area is Coos Bay. This is all kind of thought of as Coos Bay, but of course the locals, distinguish between Coos Bay and North Bend. Now, and this is going to be the most populous area along the Oregon coast. If you put the two together, I think there's over 25,000 people, 26,000 people there. Does have a bigger field. You do kind of have some larger buildings, like larger commercial buildings, sort of like in Astoria. Maybe feels most similar to Astoria. One thing to note about the housing here, housing is probably as inexpensive here as anywhere else along the Oregon coast. So if you're looking for something maybe a little bit more with a budget, this might be a great area for you. You can also find a lot of houses along the bay too. So if you want to have some water views, again, being kind of set inland, it doesn't have a huge coastal feel. It has more of a bay feel, like a Newport or an Astoria. But they do have some really great beaches and beautiful parks, really as good as anywhere else along the Oregon coast. The 101, as you can see, goes right through this area. Not a ton of tourism here. They get tourism, certainly, but it's not like a Lincoln City or a Seaside where you have a lot of bumper-to-bumper traffic because there's just a constant flow of tourism. So not as touristy here, but being bigger, you do have some great restaurants and lots of stuff to do. If you're going to come down this way, definitely, if you're traveling down the 101 and you're going south, if you have time and if you're looking for some good spots, I would highly recommend getting over here to 540 and coming all the way down here, Cape Arago, Shore Acres. These two parks right here, Bassendorf Beach. There's a couple beaches along here. Sunset Beach right here. I've been to this beach a handful of times when there was nobody else there. And it's really kind of secluded too. There's also a few great places that photographers like to go. So all of you photographers there's a couple rock formations that get hit by some really big waves and probably some of the best, like biggest waves crashing into rocks. If that's what you're looking for, you're actually going to find for all you photographers really in these kind of spots right here. So beautiful over here. This is 15 minutes or so, roughly, 20 minutes, depending on where you're coming from like a North Bend, Coos Bay. All right, now moving south, this is kind of where you get from like the central Oregon coast. This is kind of like the cutoff to like, now you're kind of getting into the southern Oregon coast. If we scroll out right here and we just kind of head due east, this down here, Roseburg and south of that, down to like a Medford, a Grants Pass. This is all kind of considered Southern Oregon. So this is kind of the cutoff between like the southern part of the Central Oregon coast to the northern part of the Southern Oregon coast. So getting down into Bandon, you're getting into the Southern Oregon coast. The 101 goes pretty much right through town. The downtown Old Town is actually just right here. So you'll see it when you drive by. You have to turn right off the 101 to go down here. Very popular, lots of people. There's typically people down here, especially in peak season. People down here at Tony's Crab Shack getting crab. Bandon, if that name strikes a bell and you haven't been here before, you might associate Bandon with golfing. They do have a world-class, one of the best golf courses in the world. I've never golfed there before, not that I'm really a golfer anyways. I'm sure the world-class golf course probably commands a world-class price, so it's probably not very cheap, and probably have to book it out pretty far in advance to get in there. But Bandon is a nice little town. You're going to find a lot of houses both here on the east and the west side of 101. A lot of nice houses here. You see this road right here, Ocean Drive, that turns into a beach loop. This beach loop road right here. Bunch of really, really nice houses right here, and you're kind of set back like kind of on a cliff, so you got a lot of great views all along this area. And this is the population here is around 3,000. So when I was mentioning Waldport, maybe this is kind of like one of the towns that I had in mind, for example. So a Waldport with 3,000 people doesn't feel the same as a Bandon with 3,000 people. Bandon is highly desirable. A lot of people go there, not just for the golf. There's a lot of other things that draw people in there, but the golf is a big one. I mean, people come from all over the world, literally, to go golf there. So Bandon feels a little bit bigger, feels a little bit more congested, a little bit more touristy. They cater a little bit more to tourists. Homes there are fairly expensive because it is more of a desirable area, and can be kind of tough too. But they are building a fair amount of homes out that way. Right now, heading south. So now you're actually not gonna see the water again really up until Port Orford. So this is, I don't know, it's like a half an hour drive, something like that. You're not gonna see a whole lot along here. This is a really cool spot. Cape Blanco might be definitely worth it if you're looking for the cool spots along the Oregon coast. They do concerts there too. There's kind of a random place for concerts, but great spot. Port Orford, very small town. As you can see, the 101 goes right through it. We don't get too many people inquiring about Port Orford. Don't see a ton of real estate moving. There's a great little viewpoint right here. Right there where you can see that parking right there. It's a great little viewpoint. Redfish is a great restaurant. Great little viewpoint right there because you're like 30, 40, 50, maybe 100 feet, something like that, depending on where you're at, kind of up above the beach right there. And you're facing just south, and you kind of have this dramatic view, and there's like rock formations and stuff like that. So this is kind of like where you first kind of get your view of the ocean, aside from, coming from Bandon. Another good little spot, if you're going to come by here, might want to drive down here, and you can watch the fishermen come in and unload, unload their catch. I'm not sure why this isn't labeled. I don't remember what the name of this place is, but stop in here and get a drink, get some oyster shooters. They got great oyster shooters. But this is kind of a place where people come hang out and check out what the fishermen do, and check out the views as well. I think South Coast Tours, one of our viewers recently, I think, commented and mentioned South Coast Tours. I've never used them, but obviously you can see they got 5 stars. So if you're looking for whatever it is that they offer, tours, charters, looks like kayaks, might want to check that out too. All right. Other than that, there's not a whole lot going on in Port Orford. Like I said, people don't inquire about it too much. Not a whole lot of people moving there. It's not exactly a town that's growing much, but it's a cool little town, a few cool little places to stop and check out. All right. Next, Orford unincorporated, not much there. The next big town that you're going to get to is going to be Gold Beach. All of this, people that live right here, you really kind of consider that Gold Beach. especially if you're not like a local that's like born and raised there. There's a lot of people that buy second homes here. So this is all kind of considered Gold Beach. One thing I'll say about this area too, there are some houses along here, up and down here. If you want something that's a little bit more secluded on the southern Oregon coast, that's not super expensive, because once we get down into Brookings, it's going to get more expensive. This is maybe a good spot, with the exception of Neskowin. There's a little tiny market right there. That's about it. Other than that, it's just all houses right here. And those houses are a little bit more expensive. You are right on the water right there. But other than that, all the kind of houses back here, not quite as expensive as what you might find down on the border at Brookings is where we'll head to next. And there's some great beaches along here too, very secluded. I've walked along these beaches here quite a few times over the years, and I've walked them many times when there was not a single other person along here. It's going to stop right here. Great little tide pools. Been in here quite a few times, just hanging out, and very rarely will you see anybody along here. Now, the beach access, there's not, and that's part of the reason. You'd have to have a house down here to kind of get access. There's not really any beach access. It's probably like 3 miles to the south is going to be your closest beach access. This house right here, this house has been on the market off and on quite a few times over the years. That little H standing for helipad kind of gives you an idea as to what type of property you're dealing with there. I don't think it's ever been listed under 8 figures, but you do have a lot of very cheap, not cheap, inexpensive houses along here. And this entire thing, this is Ucher Creek right here. Sometimes you got to ford the creek to get to the other side. So maybe another reason why you don't see whole lot of people in here. But you don't see a whole lot of people along this entire coastline until right about right here. This is where you can kind of first pull off and get beach access. So the only people that are kind of going up and down this area are mostly locals. But you can pull in right here, and this is just great beach all the way along here, all the way down to Neskowin. Now, beyond from Neskowin to get to Gold Beach, it's in like 5 minutes, 6 minutes, something like that. So Gold Beach, there's about 2,500 people here. Very small little town, very quiet, sleepy little town. Lots of stuff closes at like 8 p.m. and there's not much that stays open past 9 p.m. Very common kind of touristy thing. I think the biggest touristy thing here is Jerry's Rogue Jets. These are jet boats that go up the Rogue River. They've got a handful of trips. This is an incredibly remote part of the state, which makes it pretty cool. These boats, the reason why these boats exist, a little history for you, and they'll give you this history lesson if you take a tour with them, probably better than I can. I've taken the tour quite a few times, though, but it's really awesome. But the reason why these boats exist, initially they were called mail boats. Mail as in mail that you get in the mail, like delivering mail. These boats were used to deliver mail to people up the Rogue River, because there just weren't roads that accessed the houses along this river. 22-Ton Lodge, heard a lot about it. Supposed to have a world-class restaurant. I've never been there, but basically the Rogue River, these jet boats, they go to Agnes. That's about where they turn around. Where's Agnes? Here it is. It's maybe 40 miles or something like that. This entire area. So let me scroll out a little bit. This is the Rogue National Forest. This entire area of the southwestern corner of Oregon is very, very remote. And as you can see, southern Oregon, Grants Pass, Medford, Ashland. Medford Central Point, probably the most populous, followed by Grants Pass and then maybe Ashland. As you can see, people that live over here that are going to the beach for like a day trip or that have a second home here, they have to go all the way down through California and back up here. So like a Medford to a Gold Beach, that's like a 3-hour drive. As the crow flies, it would be probably half that, like an hour and a half. Or you can go up north and then come back down south. So for that reason, again, kind of if you think about places like Florence, people coming from Eugene, places like Lincoln City, people coming from Salem and Portland, places like Astoria and Seaside, people coming from Portland. Down here on the southern Oregon coast, you don't really have any highways that directly go over here. So for that reason, you don't quite tend to get as much traffic down in these areas. There's just not as much tourism, not as many people. So these towns just tend to be smaller. They tend to be quieter. They don't cater to tourists as much. Like I said, things close down pretty early. There's not a whole lot that stays open past 9 p.m. in a Gold Beach. There's something like 2,500 people that live here. Great town, though. As you can see, the 101 goes right through it. So if you're traveling on the 101, you won't have to, you don't have to pull off an exit to get to it. You're going to go right through it. And Gold Beach, or just kind of north of Gold Beach, anywhere up here, if you're not looking to get into Brookings, might be a good little alternative, maybe kind of a little hidden gem. Not too many people looking for Gold Beach. When people reach out to us to look for something along the Oregon coast, 9 times out of 10, they say Brookings. That Brookings is kind of like just the name, the area that people know, but you're not going to find a whole lot of difference between Gold Beach and Brookings. Brookings has maybe something like 6,500 people, so that's more than twice as many people as Gold Beach, but they're not too different. One difference I would say, though, is you do have more beaches probably in Gold Beach, maybe hence the name beach. Whereas Brookings, once you get down into Brookings, that's when you're going to see a lot more of those like dramatic rock formations that you sort of think of when you think of Southern Oregon or Northern California. Also, too, probably one of the most scenic places along the Oregon coast. I mean, this is all very, very scenic, but probably the most, if you had to pick one, it'd probably be Samuel Boardman State Park. Aside from, I mentioned like a Cannon Beach, Samuel Boardman, if you see pictures online of the Oregon coast and you see like these dramatic rock formations, most of the time they're coming from Samuel Boardman. And the most popular spot, it really used to be a secret, and it used to be when I first went there. It was very hard to find. It didn't used to be labeled on Google. The Secret Beach. It is now, even though it's still labeled on Google, people still struggle to find it. So it's still kind of somewhat of a secret. But if you're looking for something dramatic to take a picture of, it's a little bit of a challenge to get there. You can see right here, this is where people park. I don't even know if when I first went here, there really wasn't even like a parking lot. You're just like pulling over the side of 101, and then you kind of had to find your way through the forest down to the beach right there. So that's a great spot just to take a picture. All right, so down to Brookings. This is our last spot. Like I mentioned, Southern Oregon coast. We get asked about Brookings the most. You can see Harbor right here. As some people list their address as Harbor that are over here, some people actually put their address as Brookings, but this is all kind of considered Brookings. It's all about the same. And let me give you a little bit more of a satellite view. As you can kind of see, you've got these really, really dramatic rock formations. And the few kind of like sandy beaches along here are not super accessible. So if you're a beach walker, maybe not the best spot for you. Maybe get down here towards the harbor area. But Brookings is one of the most popular spots along the Southern Oregon coast. Big things about Brookings, one of the top retirement spots along the Oregon coast. So it is a sort of despite having 6,500 people, it is sort of a quiet, sleepy town. Things definitely closing down early. Now, some might say that Brookings has the best weather in all of Oregon. The weather is very mild. You do get about 60 more days of sun in Brookings as compared to like somewhere on the northern Oregon coast, like in Astoria. And you also get a lot more heat. There's something called the Brookings effect or the Chetco effect. That's the river that goes right through Brookings and Harbor is the Chetco River, and I'm probably not going to describe this the best, but there's a flow of air that comes from California, hot air, warm air, and flows up north and then kind of like settles right here and kind of heads east. I don't know how much it really kind of impacts Gold Beach, but what this does is there's times where you'll find that Brookings will be 20 degrees warmer than a Crescent City or than a Gold Beach. So there's this warm air that kind of comes somewhere along here and goes up to Brookings and goes east, and they call that the Brookings effect or the Chetco effect, and this area is sort of known for that reason as a banana belt. So that's one reason why it's a big draw for people that are retiring. Usually people that are retiring are drawn to the sun and the heat. As you get older, maybe it's a little bit harder for some people, with the cold weather and the overcast and things like that. So being beautiful and having great weather makes Brookings one of the more desirable parts along the Oregon coast. You're going to find houses all along here, all along the coast, but they're also building a lot of houses kind of back up in the hills. You can find a lot of property you can buy right back up here and build yourself, but there are a lot of new developments on both sides of the river. There's new homes being put in, a lot of big homes, a lot of expensive homes. Real estate is expensive there. You can find some inexpensive things, but you can definitely find some really expensive things in Brookings. So I hope that helps you to kind of have a better overview of the Oregon coast and some of the differences. Definitely any questions that you have, reach out to us. You can comment below. We often reply to comments, or send us a text or shoot us an email. Definitely hit the thumbs up button if this helped you. Give us a follow, hit the subscribe button, tap the bell. Make sure you get notified each time we drop new videos. We make videos like this once a week that are designed to show people what it's like to live on the Oregon coast. If you have more questions, get in touch. Remember, you can always click the link below in the description to schedule a Zoom. No matter how you get in touch, we've got your back when it comes to moving to the Oregon coast. All right, take care, everyone.